I'm going to talk about a few things. This is dieter Billie from Reedsburg, Wisconsin, and you've been emailing Zola about your low-carb baking, but let's go back to your experience on Plan Z first, then get into a little bit of your new low-carb baking as well, because I read that you started the diet back in 2011.
Well, actually, it was a little bit before that. I think I started it in 2007 or 8. And the reason I started it is because I was in the military, and I was already in my 50s at that time, or real close to them. And it was just harder and harder to maintain the fitness requirements, the weight requirements, and all this type of stuff. And this was just one of those things that actually was a workable, doable thing without doing just horrible things to myself to meet those requirements. You know, I can't imagine what other people do, and I'm sure I just touched on it when I was in the military, but there's some terrible things going on for people trying to desperately keep their weight in check.
Yeah, I had a good friend who was a wrestler in college, and he was always starving himself and always running and sitting in the sunroom trying to sweat it off. And
sweat bands and basically wrapping yourself in cellophane, and it's just crazy things, and going into saunas and places like that just to sweat and compress. And it was just, I'm sure it was horrible what I was doing to myself.
Yeah. So how did you do? And I know you've done it a few times, but how much weight were you able to lose that first round you did it?
The first time I did it, I lost 36 pounds.
Mm.
And it was amazing because I had a Facebook account, and every time I would post every day, I would just put a number before I would do a post. I would, put -2 or -3 or -1 or whatever. And finally, somebody was like, well, what is that? What are you doing? And I said, that's the amount of weight I lose each day on this program. And they were just like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's just unbelievable. Is it healthy? And all these kinds of things. And I said, well, I'm going to tell you, it's unlike any other thing you've ever done. And you get immediate response if you do the program according to the directions and use it accordingly. And I said, it just mind blows. It's just mind blowing how quickly the weight came off. And it was, I'm not going to say it was a walk in the park, but it wasn't as hard as some of these other things that I have done, where, okay, you eat cabbage soup for 2 weeks or something, I mean, you got to do something you're going to stick with, and you're not going to stick with protein shakes and cabbage soup and all that stuff for the rest of your life. You're not going to do that forever. So
yeah, it's kind of nice to be able to just eat real food and lose weight, or keep the weight steady, and
I guess the biggest complaint I would get from people who watched me do this was like, how are you getting by on this 500 or 600, 700 calories a day? And I said, well, there's a spray that we use that helps with the cravings, but I said, it's not meant, again, to be done forever. It's not a forever thing. And it's to get you to a certain place. But in the meantime, you're also learning the behavior modification that you need to do, and applying, like you said, real food, not special stuff you have to buy forever.
Yeah, when you mentioned you were one of the early dieters, and I think it was probably an 800 or 900 calorie diet back then, and it's up to at least 1,200 calories a day now. But one of the things that happens is that as you're not eating carbs and sugar, your body starts to give up the fat, so you're actually digesting some of the stored fat that you had.
Right, and that's what I would say is, I said, my body is finally eating the fat that it's been storing. It's not as if I'm starving. I'm just actually using what my body in those confused years had been putting away, because I was trying to starve myself all the time.
Yeah, that's what's really happening, and it's really an amazing. Well, it's science, so it's not that amazing, but the misinformation we've been given about how to lose weight is what's amazing.
Well, and as you know, I've been through the coaching options that, were provided probably 2 or 3 times, because I've signed up for those. And each time, okay, there's probably, I'd say 2/3 of stuff I've already heard, but it was good to hear again. And then some new stuff keeps coming out. That's one of the things I was just telling a friend of mine yesterday when I was telling her I was going to do this interview. I said, you know, she has been evolving, you know, since this whole thing has happened, and things have changed and certain things have been adjusted. And, you know, as you said, more foods and more calories have been added in the reduction period. But it's just, you know, and it's just, okay, you've always got test kitchens and things going on going, okay, what's a problem? This food here should not be a problem. Let's try this food. And as I said to my friend, everybody's body is different. Certain people's body react differently to different things. And, you know, what might be a little bit of a challenge for somebody over here is no big deal to me, or, you know, that kind of thing. And I love that the program has that kind of flexibility built in.
Yeah. So here we are today, and you mentioned the coaching, and we say that the coaching is at least 60% of the value of Plan Z, but you got to get your mind right for the long term, not just lose weight for the short term.
Right.
What was the most important thing that you learned or had to unlearn in order to be successful?
Well, one of the biggest things is, you know, and again, back in the early days, to just break the madness of diet food, you know, and of diet and of all this low cal, no cal, all these things, and then find out what was dangerous about those things, not even helpful. Because if, you know, as many of the teachings said, if these things were truly helping, then why aren't you healthy already? Why aren't you at the weight you want to be if these things were helpful? You know, because I used to have the same justification in my mind. I said, I could have a root beer float with diet root beer. I'm good, right? You know, I would have been better off just to go ahead and have the root beer, you know, just have the regular root beer. But as you know, and in the early years, started this program. I said, I just started to hate to go to the grocery store, because I spent 3 hours reading labels and just seeing how much garbage is in the aisles, you know. Okay, this sounds sounds healthy. This sounds like something I should use. And then you'd find all this sugar, all this high fructose corn syrup, all these additives I couldn't even pronounce, and chemicals and colorings, and, you know, just all this garbage. There was no food in it.
That's right. And it's ingredients, really. It's not food.
Right.
And and now you really don't have to go down those aisles anymore.
Nope, I figured that part out, and I don't even go there. You know, when I walk down it, I just shake my head, because I'm on my way, you know, cutting through a store more than going in that aisle to pick up anything.
Yeah.
And I just think how much these people pick up of stuff. And literally, I drive people crazy, because they'll say, well, do you want to use this? I said, nope, it's not even real food. It's non-food, you know, don't give me the margarine, don't give me the non-dairy creamer, don't give me, you know, I just, and they're like, you're just so crazy. I says, no, I'm just not, I'm tired of eating plastic, you know. So,
That's really that's great to learn that. And I think about how little I go down the aisles. When I go down the aisles for mustard and coffee and Tabasco sauce, but
right.
you can really steer clear of a lot of bad food. So let's talk about your low carb baking thing.
Well, the thing is that I've been retired now for going on almost 5 years. So I do a lot of cooking at home. And what, you know, of course, one of your teachings again came out and said that, you know, if you cook at home, that's going to be a 70% increase or something to that effect of success, because then you control what's going in your food. You know exactly how much of any ingredient you're putting in it, and you're not getting all these hidden sugars and hidden um, bad things in your food to be for filler, you know, and that kind of thing. Because all the processed food and all this kind of stuff is, you know, I always tell people, if it's convenient and cheap, it's probably not good for you. So I just, you know, all the whole fast food industry and the whole 9 yards. So we do a lot of cooking. We cook at home. And my husband, who does not participate in the program itself, whenever I go through a reduction, he insists on eating what I'm eating. He might just eat a bit more of it, you know, to get him through it or something like that. But if I'm just having a, you know, a boiled egg and a little bit of maybe a couple woven crackers and a couple pieces of fruit or something, then that's what he wants. And then in the meantime, he'll grumble about me doing it. But I said, nobody's telling you to do it. I'm just doing it. And if you want to eat something else, you go right ahead. I said, you know, because the cheese and all the fat is cut out of the program at that time. And I said, if you want to put a piece of cheese on your, you know, egg or whatever, that's fine. I'm just I'm just avoiding it for the week or the couple months, whatever I'm doing, you know. And so it's funny because as much as he grumbles about it, he still goes along with it. But the whole baking thing started because I do have time. I'm home and it is something I enjoy doing. I do enjoy cooking, but I like taking a recipe and starting to cut the ingredients down to alternative flours, alternative sweetener, you know, and just try to get something that's acceptable or close to acceptable or even better than, okay, we're going to have a bunch of people over for, you know, the 4th of July. I'd like to have a little something as a dessert. So I'm trying to find things that I can join in with them, because that's one of the biggest problems I have with my particular peer group and family is they can't stand it when I'm not eating what they're eating. They can't stand to watch me not have something. I had my mother-in-law told me for years, she goes, I just hate that you are suffering. And I said, I'm not suffering. I'm fine. Just because I'm not having a mound of potatoes on my plate, I'm not suffering. I'm getting plenty of food and I'm doing just fine. But it just seems to bother more people when they notice I'm not eating something. So I said, okay, I'm going to try to come up with some recipes where I'll take a basic recipe and then slowly start cutting the flour to part almond flour or part coconut flour and just see how it comes out. And sometimes it's kind of a crumbly mess, and sometimes it actually is a little more full bodied and has, you know, a more robust flavor than the flour that went into it or whatever. So that's where that all started, is just kind of trying to get healthy, and then also trying to also do this for my kids as well, because I have one son and one daughter-in-law who deal with weight and struggle with weight. And I said, if you would just give a few things a chance, you might find that just a few changes to your diet at least will get you a little further down the road. And I don't want you to get into the point where you're having diabetic problems and, you know, joint problems because of the extra weight you're carrying around and all that kind of stuff. I said, because I'm going to tell you, as you get older, the old body doesn't like it when you've been too abusive in the early years. So.
Yes, my chiropractor would agree with you. So what's really worked and come out well in this
one of
journey?
the most recent things that I've done was I made a tart shell, and it's completely out of coconut flour. And I can send the recipe. I was going to send a couple recipes in and let you guys look at them and see where, like I was telling Jen on there, maybe where you might tweak it or might say, hey, this would be a little bit even better if you did this or added a little bit of coconut oil to it, or, you know, whatever. And one of the best ones was a tart shell that's coconut flour. And then you can put, right now we have fresh blueberries coming in. We've got black cap raspberries, you know, I mean, fruit's starting to come in. Peaches are coming in. Oh, excuse me. So to have a nice little tart cup that you can start with, and then maybe, you know, like with the blueberries, put a little bit of cream in it and then freeze them, and then have just, you know, this little tart with almost like a little custard or ice cream to it, you know, all these kind of things like that just help get you through those dessert cravings without blowing yourself off the map with a half a Snickers bar or whatever, you know. And that was another one I found that was really kind of cool, and was to make these date Snickers. So you take a date, you remove the pit, you add your peanut butter, and then I just drizzle some really dark chocolate over it and stick them in the freezer. And all of a sudden I've got this thing that reminds me of a Snickers bar, you know, because I use crunchy peanut butter, and I'm going, wow, you know, I can give up on Snickers for the rest of my life for that, you know.
Well, we want a picture of those. And,
they're really amazing. Well, in the first one, I kind of just left them in the refrigerator. And of course, the peanut butter doesn't really solidify in the refrigerator because it's natural peanut butter. It's got a pretty high oil content. So I stuck them in the freezer, and man, that just was a game changer right there. They stayed together. They were, you know, the texture and everything of a Snickers, you know. So it was, so the nougat is replaced by the date. And again, they're so rich that just one of them satisfies.
Yeah, sure. That's fun. I don't know if you've seen the recipe on the Plan Z site, but Zola has a recipe for pumpkin pancakes on there. Oh
yeah.
Those are really good.
Well, and that's kind of the other thing, is I kind of slipped into this thing where I'm maintaining my own sourdough. And again, that's already got a flour base, but I take that sourdough and I add almond flour, and I make a pancake out of that. I do a pancake recipe out of that. And then you get that little twang of sourdough in there. And, you know, you're talking about putting less than a cup of sourdough, and I'm making, you know, 12 or 15 little pancakes, little silver dollar pancakes.
Sure.
Hubby's eating the majority of them, but I'm going to eat probably 2 or 3 at a time, you know, and they're just awesome because you really don't even have to put anything on them. You know, they just have this nutty flavor anyway when you cook them up. And then, like I said, with the fruits that are coming in already, just throw a few berries on them or throw a few berries in them when you're cooking them. And, you know, you've got just this great treat and a little whipped cream on top, and everybody thinks I've blown my diet because I threw whipped cream on it. And I'm like, that's the least of your worries. Probably that little bit of flour in that sourdough is worse than this whipped cream on my pancake.
Well, it sounds like you've got that under control though. So you've maintained your weight, but you said you had made a few bad choices over the years.
Well, I'm like most human beings. I kind of have my ebb and flow of, you know, we went on vacation, or, you know, we had something going on or something that kept me from being able to cook in my own house type of thing. And then you kind of find yourself spiking up a little bit, or you kind of let things go, or maybe I don't take my scale with me when I've gone someplace and, you know, kind of lost track that something was bugging me. So yeah, every once in a while I will get a couple of bottles of the Crave spray. And maybe twice a year, I just do a little maintenance. I do a 7 to 10 day maintenance and just kind of get myself back on track. I do the reduction for the 7 days and just, you know, kind of reset things a little bit that maybe I was fudging a little bit too much, or maybe I just, like I said, just ignoring it and it got a little out of hand, or maybe I celebrated a little bit too much on vacation or something like that, you know. And again, it's the peer pressure. If you can find something, and I did, you know, when I first started doing this and I decided, hey, the alcohol is going to get cut out for a couple months and all that. But I said, I can make a club soda, put some fruit in it. Nobody's the wiser. They don't know if there's vodka in there or not, you know, and it's just the idea that I'm holding a glass that has some bubbles in it and maybe some fruit, and everybody's good with it. But if I don't, then they're like, oh, come on, you know, a glass of wine won't hurt. And I'm going, well, we've seen people in their testimonies out there go, well, you know, I went ahead and had a couple of glasses of wine and they came off, you know, they weren't seeing the progress they could have been making. So, you know, I mean, yeah, nobody's holding a gun to your head. You can cheat, you can do those things, but do you want to cheat when you're going to just make your mind up to do something and get to a point and then see how much your body can tolerate?
Yeah, people who cheat with that, with drinking, usually lose about 60% less weight than the average dieter. So
it's just, you know, and it's not worth it to me. If you're going to go to the trouble and put the money into it and do it. You know, if you're not, then don't do it, you know, live with your choices. But to me, I find it odd that people are always like, well, you know, I forgot to do this today. And so I just went ahead and had an egg sandwich, you know, or whatever. And you go, you know, you can't have an egg sandwich. Why don't you just have an egg, you know? So, eat, and everybody gets their schedule messed up. But as I was telling Jen, even when we travel, because we do leave the area in February and go down to Florida for a month. When we travel, it's actually easier to stay on the program because you're in a vehicle. I'm drinking all my water. I take along just what I can eat. So we're just eating what we're supposed to eat and drinking all our water. And my sprays are real easy to keep on track. And, you know, so that is not an excuse because it actually works better than the distractions of being at work or, you know, getting busy in the yard and forgetting to do your spray or whatever.
What is that, about a 3-day trip to Florida from there, or do you do it?
Well, we don't go that far south. We just go to the Panhandle. So it's a 2-day trip. We go to Pensacola, and we had been going down there in a camper. And then we kind of decided to upgrade to renting a house for the month. And so we would really enjoy it. I mean, it's not like we're laying on the beach getting suntans in February in Pensacola, but it's definitely not 25 below zero and snowing sideways all day, you know. So it's the kind of break we're looking for. And we did go further south to like Cocoa Beach once. And in February, it was in the 90s, probably a third of the time we were there. And I said, that's too hot. I don't care for that heat. And so we went back to the Panhandle area where we like it.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I mean, here it gets to be, you could have 25 degrees in the morning
Yeah,
and see your breath. And then, about 2 o'clock, it's 55 or 60 in
right.
February. The
Yeah.
daffodils come up.
And then, one of these days we might have to see what happens, but we live on a pretty big piece of land here and it's getting to be a little bit much, and I do a lot of gardening and I do a lot of yard work and things like that, but it's getting to be where it's, I don't want to be a slave to it. I enjoy doing it while I enjoy doing it, but if it becomes enslavement, I won't do it. And I keep telling my friends, I said, one of these days, all these flowers will become metal. They'll just miraculously turn to metal and there will not be any more deadheading and cleaning up flower beds and all that stuff.
Yep, Zola used to have a garden that was on tour in Madison, and now she has 5 pots on our little deck in Chattanooga.
Yeah.
So it's we've downsized quite a bit, but yeah, it's nice.
Well, and I enjoy the being outside and the doing the physical work to some degree, but it's just getting a little bit much as to what I've evolved into here. So one of these days, it's 80 acres.
Whew.
Yeah, but we live on probably 2.5 that we actually, mow and maintain. But we also have a little cabin down below where our house is at, and we maintain that as well. And I said, it's just getting to be a bit much. It's about a 3 to 4 hour mowing event. My husband does the 0 turn because he's got a Meniere syndrome. He has the dizziness and imbalance, so I don't make him push and get overheated that way. But I do the pushing, and it's about an hour and 15 minutes for me just to do the trim work. But I told him, I said, it's not going to be for the rest of my life. I'm not going to be doing this.
It's funny. I haven't had a lawnmower for 17 years, and I don't miss that chore. My father was in the lawnmower business, and I didn't know you had to pay for lawnmowers until I got my own house.
You just thought that was like getting a refrigerator in your house, right? To get a lawnmower.
We'd be testing the lawnmower of the year and the riders and all that stuff. Well, one question that I have that I like to ask all the people that I talk to is, and you've given some great advice, but if somebody was considering doing this diet starting tomorrow, what would be the best advice you could give them?
The best advice, and it came to me also probably on my second round that I did, was the difference in this diet, in this program, as opposed to any other diet I've ever done, and of course I've done almost all of them, is the teaching. Like you said, it's 60% of the value of this program is teaching you and behavior modification through that teaching. Because if you don't know why you're doing something, you're eventually not going to do it. If you don't understand the damage it's doing to your body to eat these foods the way you've been eating, the way we grew up eating, and understandably knowing that we've been lied to basically from my childhood, from the 50s, 60s to the present day about what food is and how food should be eaten and what the human body does the best with. We've had all these things change around the 50s. With the corn and the high fructose corn syrup and the processed foods and all these things. And we just, we grew up not realizing this change happened. And before that, you could eat those foods and you were fine. And nobody was, having these horrible problems unless they had some other health issue going on. But now this is the norm versus the exception that it once was. So this program, we have to work with what we have, but this program at least makes you aware of what is in food, how your body processes food, how it gets confused by these different things that's happened to food. And it's really, to me, it's just shameful that our government and that our people that produce food kind of have been duped as well as, as the farmers, and especially just all this GMO and all these things that they have done to food that have taken a good, basic, honest, wonderful thing and turned it into something that actually is making us sick and making us unwell and making us have these long-term issues that, before were almost unheard of, especially in children. And so I think the teaching, the behavior modification, the positive reinforcement of the initial 50 days of the program, I just believe that you're not going to find for the money a diet anywhere else that does anything else to give you this kind of results, this kind of education, and this kind of support. I mean, I make a phone call or send an email or a text or something, and within an hour or less, I have a response. And if somebody doesn't know the answer, then they will get the answer. And within 24 hours, the answer will be made, or else, hey, well, this is really something we need to look into. So I mean, whether it's a recipe, whether it's something about the program, whether it's about medication somebody's taking, and nobody professes to be a doctor, but there are things that can affect the success of this diet that sometimes people haven't given thought. Like, I take a medication that causes my body to block, this thing being able to help me. And right there, that should be an indicator that something's wrong if it's not letting me digest good food and actually do what it's supposed to do. But, that's another issue altogether. But the people I know that I've known through the program that have actually, lowered their blood pressure, almost gotten rid of their diabetes, just all these health issues, that have gotten better, sleeping better and breathing better and all these things. I mean, to me, that's one of my biggest frustrations in the world today, is that there's so many things we can change if we just change our diet. We don't have to take the medications that will give us a secondary issue. We can be healthy without taking medication, start dropping off. I was taking 3 or 4 medications. Now I'm down to just one that is basically just a maintenance thing. And I take a few supplements, and that's about it.
Yep.
So,
well, that's a great way to end, because if you don't know why you're doing it, you won't continue to do it.
right.
And you can lose the weight and say, well, the diet's over, I'll go back to normal. But
yeah, there's no normal again, because if you don't change what you're doing, you're going to go right back to what you had.
Yeah.
You've got to change what you're doing.
It's forward to normal, to the new normal. And I think you found that.
Yeah.
You found it, and you did a great job of sharing that with us. So thank you very much for working on a Saturday.
Well, hey, no problem. And like I said, I plan on sending in about 3 or 4 recipes just to have your folks look at them and see what you think, and maybe be added to the gallery of great recipes that are already out there. Lots of thinking outside the box going on in that recipe repertoire you guys have.
I want to try that Snickers bar myself.